The government and council will jointly fund the $42,000 project, which involves the removal of about 100 tonnes of loose material from the cliff face. However, it's only the beginning of a $500,000 scheme that will see the cliff resloped. Council will apply to the government for further funding once the preliminary work is completed. Meantime, Shortland Esplanade will continue to be closed to traffic during wet weather.
It's touted as one of the biggest pro-ams in Australia, $25,000 in prize money, 2 days of championship golf, 72 professional and amateur players. Sydney pro Andre Stoltz was on fire, hitting a 71 and 66, finishing at 5 under par. Gosford's Mark Churcher, a picture of concentration on the greens. Terrigal golfer Russell Swanson played some superb shots, shining in the class field, and it seems the pressure wasn't affecting him at all. Swanson went on to tie for the lead with Stoltz, Peter Jones third on 139.
Sensing the Breakers were on a roll, a crowd of almost 3,000 urged the team to its first home win of the season. In the 5th minute, Warren Spink set the scene, scoring from a Nicky Meredith cross. Melbourne fought back, but Gibson flew above the pack for the first of many brilliant saves. The Breakers' keeper was also helped when he needed it. As the rain started to fall, the Breakers charged. Young Socceroo keeper Frank Jurich kept busy. The visitors continued their attack from out wide, but Gibson was on hand to stop the curved ball. Despite the soggy conditions, the Breakers' passing was accurate. Skipper Andy Kosker unlucky with this chance. In the 40th minute, Melbourne's luck changed. John Kosh was shown the yellow card and Andrew Marth showed Gibson the back of the net. In the second stanza, Melbourne threatened early. Kosker felled Vaughan Coveney inside the box, but Gibson met the challenge. In the 61st minute, the Breakers cracked, Joseph Biskich taking CSC ahead. But 2 minutes later, Spink equalised for the Breakers. And in the 78th minute, a costly mistake by CSC, Olympic rep Brad Maloney giving the Breakers a much-needed 3-2 victory. The Breakers now play Wollongong City away tomorrow night. Matthew White, NBN News.
This is the fishing vessel Paul Grunzel and the boat's skipper Daniel Tilley were welding. When 28-year-old Daniel returned to the Hannell Street wharf this morning, police and work cover were already checking the boat. The explosion lifted the floor of the vessel, buckling and tearing the hull. It's thought to be a write-off. Daniel and Paul began welding at around 6 o'clock. Paul had repaired a small crack in the hull and turned his attention to a split inside the vessel.
And I don't know if he's put the gun down to try to weld the one on the floor, or he's just put it down and it's arced out, but that's when it exploded.
The explosion threw Daniel into the air. He landed on the canopy, which collapsed under his weight. Paul was thrown to the back of the vessel.
I saw Paul on fire, his T-shirt, and both of us just instantly jumped in the water. Yeah.
After ensuring the boat was not on fire, the pair dragged themselves from the water and went for help.
We went across here to the Lovetts first to see if anyone was there, just to ring an ambulance, because Paul knew he was, in a bad way. No one was there, so we went to the Albion to try to do the same there. No one was there, so straight up to the water police, and Paul was the driver.
Senior Constable Jim Wilson arrived for work at the Water Police depot to find the men in shock in the car park.
The driver had serious burns to his arms, face and legs, and the passenger had a cut to the eye.
He says it's remarkable Paul Grunzel was able to drive as far as he did. Both were taken to John Hunter Hospital. Daniel had his eye stitched and was allowed to leave, but Paul will be in hospital for a few days yet. Paul is the shark netting contractor for Newcastle. A 3.5-metre shark he found in nets yesterday was still hanging from the boat. It was disposed of this afternoon. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Inline skaters beware. Newcastle Highway Patrol and Beat Police are on the lookout for lawbreakers.
A concern not only for the rollerbladers' safety themselves, but for the general public out there on the roadways and on the footpaths as well.
According to police, these are the rules. No riding at night, nor on streets with a median strip or any road markings, and no riding on footpaths where pedestrians could be endangered. Offenders will face a $36 fine. The skaters say police could better spend their time chasing real criminals. The officers deny they're being spoil sports with children's fun.
People's safety is paramount. We're not going to push it aside and treat it as a minor issue. We've got to treat it seriously.
The enforcement will run for 2 days, but police have warned they'll continue to be on the lookout for skaters who are breaking the law. Meanwhile, Newcastle Council is still investigating proposals for skating areas. Beyond police enforcements, council officers have the power to stop skating on any footpath, deserted or not. It seems the only legal skating areas are cycleways, a rink or bowl, or on private property. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The 12-time world champion was the man the crowds came to see, but in the time trial he struggled. Young gun Brooke Tatnall scorched around the track to take pole. In the main event, Tatnall and Kinser fell behind Skip Johnson, but with just 15 laps to go, disaster struck for the leader. Johnson was left stranded, while Kinser was left a clear run to take the checkered flag. Tatnall came in second, Peter Craft third and Rod Bowen fourth. If you wanted a quiet swim today, Scott's Head wasn't the place to be. It was overrun by competitors from 10 North Coast clubs, taking advantage of the ideal conditions. The event attracted a healthy crowd, but for some, it was all too much. Host club Scott's Head took out the open boat section, Woolgoolga claimed the reserves, and Nambucca the under-18s. On the sand, it was a case of the fastest or the flattest, as the action hotted up in the beach flags. At Crescent Head, the faces were a little younger, but just as determined. More than 100 7 to 13-year-olds competed in the Junior Surf Challenge, a continuous race using the board, swim, relay and sprint legs. Port Macquarie claimed the top spot, Southwest Rocks second and Camden Haven third. It was a capacity crowd, and it was action they wanted. That's exactly what they got, although this rider got more than he bargained for. The angry bulls let fly, but the riders held on. Steve Parkinson from Scone claiming the bull ride. There was pain on the faces of many, but some light relief was never far away. They roped them in the steer wrestling, won by Kempsey's Cameron Glass. There's no doubt it's a dangerous business, and not just for those on board the horses. As night fell, the ladies took to the turf, Chris Hawkins winning the barrel race. In the end, it was a tough night out, but for the riders, one they're always guaranteed to get a kick out of.
Glen Innes farmer Doug Fletcher and his son were delivering a load of hay to a property at Bundarra early this morning. When he checked his truck at Inverell, everything was okay. But then...
Seen a lady waving to us, and we actually thought it was a friend from Bundarra, and we waved back to her, and then a truck come along and said, "You're on fire."
Doug Fletcher stopped the truck, but when he couldn't put out the fire, he kept driving, hoping to get help.
I got in and drove along the road, and I was going to save me truck and let it burn down, but there was that many cars coming, you was frightened of putting everybody in danger, so we pulled off the road and waited for the fire brigade.
The fire spread to the cabin of the truck. It was extinguished by 2 brigades. The load of hay, together with the truck, were completely destroyed. It's believed a spark from the exhaust pipe may have started the fire. Police have warned farmers delivering hay to ensure their hay is shielded from the truck's exhaust pipe. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Round 4 of the championships were underway in Newcastle today, with extra pressure facing the players. Tomorrow, selectors will name a country 11 to play the mighty West Indians in a touring match at Carl Oval on Wednesday. New South Wales is the only undefeated side in the championships and should provide most of the players for the Australian team. One of those pressing for selection is 23-year-old batsman Anthony Daly from the Newcastle suburb of Waratah. A schoolboy star, Daly has been under pressure to live up to his reputation, and yesterday against Queensland he did, smashing 110 to steer the Blues to victory. It's Daly's first country championships, and he's comfortable with the change in pace.
The standard's been really good actually. I've been sort of learning a lot off the other players and watching them play, and it's been really good.
One of 6 Newcastle players in the team, Daly says local knowledge has given him the edge.
The other teams come in here and they sort of don't really know the grounds and the wickets, so yeah, it's a big advantage.
A cool customer at the crease, he remains just as calm about the prospect of opening against the fiery Windies.
Not too nervous?
No, I just enjoy the game, I think, if chosen, so I think that's what it's all about.
Matthew White, NBN News.
But if they think they can do it, why not have a try? Because I think principals would welcome more mature age students. I quite enjoyed it. I really did. People laugh and think, getting back to school and that sort of thing, but it's no load to carry. Not extra knowledge. In fact, it makes you hungry for more.
This is the European wasp, which is making its home in the hunter. It's a little bigger than a bee and has a distinctive yellow back and legs. Until now, the wasp has been found in Sydney and along the south coast, but it appears it's heading further north. A pest control operator found this nest in a backyard at Merewether. The European wasps usually make their home underground in the roots of trees or in retaining walls. They are aggressive, and people overseas have been known to die from their sting.
These particular wasps, unlike a bee, which only stings once, these can sting multiple times.
Brian Curtin from the Department of Agriculture says householders should be aware of the wasps and take precautions. During the spring and summer months when the wasps are most active, they require sugar and protein. The sugar they can get from soft drinks and the protein they can get from meat on a barbecue.
People drinking out of cans or bottles. If the foraging wasps do come trapped in there and people drink from their cans and bottles, they could be stung around the mouth area or the throat area.
While the European wasps are regarded as pests, the department urges people not to indiscriminately kill all wasps. If you are concerned about them in your yard, contact the Department of Agriculture or a pest control company. Jodie McKay, NBN News. Ada Collins's body was found by her son on Monday the 30th of November. A post-mortem revealed she died from strangulation. Police have asked the public for assistance in catching her killer. Neighbours have told police that Mrs Collins was visited by a male friend on Saturday the 28th between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. She was last seen at 4 o'clock that afternoon, making her way to the front gate on her walking frame. An hour later, another neighbour said she heard Mrs Collins talking to a man in the driveway. He had an accent, possibly English or Scottish. Police also believe a small red car was parked outside the house sometime that weekend. It had distinctive cross-pattern wheels. Police would like to speak to anyone who was in the street who may have information. They believe Mrs Collins was killed sometime between late Saturday and mid-morning Sunday. Jodie McKay, NBN News. The Wallace Creek Bridge on Trapoid Road was closed 16 months ago after being declared unsafe because of termite damage. Maitland Council is repairing it at a cost of $170,000. The road links east with West Maitland and is an alternative route to the Pacific Highway. But there's a war of words between residents and farmers over whether the bridge and road should be reopened.
It's not just the local community.
By shutting the road, you are against the local community. That's the whole argument.
On one side is the farming community who use Trapoid Road to move machinery and stock, and the business people of Melbourne Street who say commerce is suffering by the road being closed.
On behalf of the majority of the East Maitland business people, you know, Melbourne Street, we want that bridge open because that's one of the reasons we brought our businesses to Melbourne Street.
Pushing for the bridge to stay closed are residents who say it is too narrow and should not be used by through traffic.
We don't want the heavy through traffic. We don't want to see it used as an alternative highway. Now, what we wanted is
The issue goes to Council on Tuesday night. Mayor Bob G says that although both sides of the argument will be considered, he believes the bridge will be reopened. However, he does acknowledge that if that happens, safety on the Trapezoid Road needs to be improved. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Katara resident Charlie Haywood regularly shops at Garden City. However, since the shopping centre owner AMP introduced a policy banning smoking, Charlie has had to leave the complex whenever he's wanted to light up.
I don't think it's fair at all to smokers. It gives you the impression that you're a social outcast. By that I mean that if you want to have a smoke, you have to virtually go out in the paddock.
For management, though, the decision was clear. AMP introduced the policy following a recent passive smoking case.
After recent reports and research on the dangers of passive smoking, that really for the safety and comfort of not only our staff but our customers, the way to go was to make our centres smoke-free.
Ironically, a tobacconist is still selling cigarettes to shoppers in the complex.
It's a commercial reality. The tobacconist has been here for a number of years and is still here and will maintain its presence as long as illegal selling of tobaccos is allowed.
The new owner of the shop, Wayne Brown, wasn't prepared to comment on camera about how the ban would affect his business. But centre manager Sam Solaro says the owner had been warned about the introduction of a smoke-free zone before he bought the business. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Every year since 1978, increasingly more students have competed for the 72 first-year places in Newcastle University's Faculty of Medicine. The course's popularity is attributed to its content, the mixture of taking those already with degrees and life skills, developing communications ability, and adopting a problems and community-based approach to teaching has put Newcastle on the medical map.
Our follow-up studies comparing with graduates of other schools have indicated that our graduates are better at communicating, they are better at taking a person's problem in a very broad context and not just focusing onto one aspect. And that's been an important part of our curriculum, something that other schools recognise.
Not only are other schools recognising Newcastle's program, they're now copying it. The universities of Sydney and Queensland and Flinders University in South Australia are adopting similar guidelines for their curricula. And it seems when the universities were seeking advice in changing their approach, even some of the world's biggest institutions recommended looking at Newcastle.
Went to Harvard. Harvard's first response actually to Sydney was, well, why didn't you go up the road to Newcastle? They've been doing it longer than we have.
Professor Hamilton, who's the Dean of the Medical Faculty, is also advising universities in the United Kingdom and Uganda on how to train the doctors of tomorrow. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Fame Cove is a bushland peninsula in the middle of Port Stephens. It's owned by Australian Paper Manufacturing. But on the 23rd it will be auctioned, and that has many people in the area concerned. Residents of North Arm Cove to Tea Gardens have joined with the Kurua Aboriginal Land Council to lobby the state government. They want the government to buy the land and declare it a national park.
There's Aboriginal significance, there's rainforest, there's a beautiful headland. It's right on the foreshore. It's wonderful land.
Local member Bob Martin has taken up the cause. He's optimistic the government will come to the party, but time is running out. They have just 8 days to save it from private ownership. If the government doesn't oblige, the group says they'll put in their own bid.
We'll put a proposition to them as a group to pay a deposit on it and then seek sponsorship thereafter. And now I might add to that we've had numerous pledges of substantial finance from the public.
A spokesperson for the Minister for Environment, Chris Harcher, says a decision on whether the land is purchased will not be made until next week, only days before the auction. Jodie McKay, NBN News. Oyster Cove at Port Stephens is famous for oysters. Soon it could be the home of the area's largest commercial marina. Behind the $500,000 project are Andrew Phillips and Daryl Brazier. They're waiting for development approval from Port Stephens Council, but hope to have the slipways operating by September. The shipyard would service around 40 vessels at a time, even allowing fishermen to carry out their own repairs if they wish.
The reason this development is different from most other slipways is that we have one area where we bring the boats up, but we have an area where we can house a number of boats simultaneously. So if the fishing fleet, for example, is stormed in, we can bring them up at very, very short notice.
Andrew Phillips is from a long line of oyster farmers, so he says of prime concern is pollution control.
Huge pollution pit, mainly to contain all waste products, spoon drains around the outside to prevent any external runoff. All runoff from the development will come into the major pollution pit and be pumped away.
Mr Phillips says there are few commercial slipways along the east coast to service fishing vessels and small patrol boats up to 55 metres in length. As well as providing a much needed service for fishermen, it will also benefit the local community.
We're looking to employ approximately 40 people initially in the development itself, but as we can simultaneously bring up about 40 vessels at once, maybe 3 to 4 guys working on each vessel, we could have in excess of 200 people working here.
The show, which is held at the Civic Centre every year, has attracted exhibitors from 5 states. Many of them are stopping off on their way home from the recent Australian Antique Fair at Jupiter's Casino on the Gold Coast. There are not only wares of fine quality, but also the unusual. French figurines and furniture captured plenty of attention, as did this detailed ornament of a chess game. While price tags vary, a piece of furniture has been known to fetch more than $100,000. Organisers are pleased with the number of people coming through the doors who are helping to raise much needed money for Camp Quality.
Last month, promoter Bob Locke announced plans for the charity concert to be held at the Glen Innes Showground. The concert was to be backed by Care Australia to raise money for famine-ravaged Somalia. But the organisation has now withdrawn the use of its name from association with the concert. Care says it was not entirely satisfied with the progress of arrangements for the venture. As a result, Bob Locke is not authorised to accept or receive donations, incur expenses or make commitments on behalf of Care Australia. Advertising for the concert has mentioned the Commonwealth Bank as a sponsor, but the bank says it has never given its authority to use its name in relation to the event. McInerney's news agency was to be a ticket-selling agency for the concert, but has now also withdrawn its backing. Artist Norma O'Hara-Murphy is also believed to have withdrawn her services and now won't be performing if the concert proceeds. Other artists billed as performing include John Paul Young and Reg Lindsay. Bob Locke says he's hopeful the concert will still go ahead.
Well, I'm still working on keeping the concert going. Obviously, shock news from Care Australia about the withdrawal as a sponsor is something to be considered very quickly.
Mr Locke says the funds raised from the concert will still go to Somalia.
The important thing is I believe, to make sure the concert continues, to make sure that the funds from the concert end up in Somalia, whether it be a different charity or not. I think the community who want to support Somalia really want to support the children. And I don't think they care.
The street circuit races are a favourite of the riders, and the competitors were pumped up for a big event. A strong field lined up for the race, held in perfect conditions. As always, it was a game of cat and mouse at the front, the lead constantly changing. As the field neared the halfway mark, the pace picked up. The leaders broke away, Coffs Harbour's Mark Batty shooting ahead. Batty maintained his lead, just sneaking home in front of Casino's Steve McMahon to take the $400 prize money. Choppy conditions made life difficult for the competitors. Spectators grabbed every vantage point they could. The under-18 Ironman featured an outstanding performance from Woolgoolga's Nathan Meyer. Meyer worked his way through the pack to take a commanding lead by the final leg. He finished well ahead of his nearest rival. Meyer was named Man of the Carnival after also winning the Open and under-18 surf double. The Open Ironman was a close and a family affair. Brothers Scott and David Reeves from Coffs Harbour finished in what looked like a dead heat, but Scott was named the winner.
Temperatures have soared into the high 30s since last Thursday. While some people have sought shelter indoors, for others that wasn't enough.
With this weather, yeah, I am. You have to buy an air conditioner.
Air conditioning companies like Coles Refrigeration at Broadmeadow say they've been overwhelmed by customer requests for cooling systems to be installed or repaired.
We're just coping. We had the entire staff working on Saturday, and they were working Friday until 11 o'clock at night, and absolutely every man and his dog's out working at the moment.
NBN's weatherman Nat Jeffrey can afford to say he told us so. He predicted the heat wave last week.
Well, yes, don't like to brag, but...
On Friday, Singleton and Gloucester were the hottest spots in the state, reaching 40 degrees. Yesterday, that dubious honour went to Jerry's Plains, with a high of 38. In Newcastle, it reached 37, and even at Nobby's Beach, it was 35.
What we've had is a high-pressure system out in the Tasman Sea, generating very warm northerly winds over New South Wales. And of course, we've had no southerly changes. We've had that same regime now for the last 5 days.
Late today, a cool change moved through the Hunter, but it'll be short-lived with more hot weather on the way. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The skies were smiling, but the surf wasn't. Light offshore winds producing small swells. The clean but half-metre waves tested the manoeuvrability of the competitors. The top 96 male and female amateur surfers from each state are participating. One main aim, to produce form that'll please the selectors and help them gain a spot in the Australian team due to compete in the world titles later this year. The entrants are also vying for a slice of the $6,000 prize money, the first time money has been offered. The initiative is part of the new national format, which allows winners to put their money in a trust fund, which they can then use to cover expenses when travelling to other championships. It's also the first time the national titles have been staged outside the Sydney metropolitan area. And the home water proved favourable for Central Coast surfers Dave Nielsen and John Schmittenberg, who won their heats to advance into tomorrow's second round. Also gaining a second round berth, Newcastle's Jamie Lambert. The championships will culminate with the finals scheduled for Sunday. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.